Welcome to your first statistics lesson. Unit 1 is on organizing data. Lesson 1.1 is has the objective of you applying the basic definitions of statistics. So data and statistics. Data is simply information in a context, and there's two types of data. There's quantitative data, which are numerical measurements, and there's qualitative or categorical data, which are classifications or categories. Statistics is the study of how to collect, organize, analyze, and interpret numerical information from data. Okay, so we are going to be looking at woodchucks quite a bit here in the first unit. Suppose we wanted to know how much wood a woodchuck could chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood. The data we would want is the amount of wood woodchucks are chucking. Statistics would give us the methods for determining the average amount of wood chucked by a woodchuck, as well as how much that amount varies from one little critter to the next. Another distinction we need to make is between populations and samples. The population is all measurements or observations of interest. It is often not feasible or simply too costly to obtain all measurements or observations of interest, so we take a sample, which is simply part of the population. The sample should be representative of the population. A random sample, a sample that's determined by chance, is one that is representative. So back to our woodchucks, the population would be the amount that every woodchuck in the U.S. chucks in a day, because that's what we're interested in, is how much wood a woodchuck would chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood. So the population is just every single one of those amounts. Well, we're probably not going to be able to get every woodchuck in the U.S. and count how much wood it chucks during a day. So we would need to take a sample. So an example of a sample would be the amount that 100 randomly selected woodchucks from all U.S. woodchucks chucks in a day. A census is when all measurements from the population are used, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's just impossible. Sampling, measurements from a subset of the population are used whenever you're doing sampling. Now, another way to produce data is through an experiment, and that's a study in which a treatment is deliberately imposed on a subject in order to observe a given response. And a simulation is a numerical facsimile of real-world phenomena. It's often done with software. So back to our woodchucks, we would be conducting a census if we measured the daily woodchucking of all the woodchucks. A sample or sampling would be if we measured the woodchucking of 100 woodchucks. An experiment would be if we gave Red Bull to 20 woodchucks and saw how much more wood they chucked that day. And a simulation would be if we programmed a computer to demonstrate the effects of giving woodchucks steroids to improve their daily woodchucking output. Okay, one thing of interest is the level of measurement being used, and there's different kinds of levels of measurement, and there's different statistics that are used to summarize when you have these different levels of measurement. Nominal level is when categories are used, just measures or names only. Ordinal level are when the categories or measures name and rank or order the observations. So one is better than the other. Nominal, they're not necessarily one's better than the other. It's like if you're just working with cars and you label them by the color of cars. You've got silver, gray, black, red, white, blue, green, all those. One's not necessarily better than the other. Ordinal level, that would be if you were doing something like bad, fair, good, excellent, then that would be ordinal level. Interval level is categories or measures, name and rank. Okay, so there's order of the observations and give meaningful differences between data values, but there is no absolute zero. Okay, so there might be a zero, but it doesn't mean that the absolute absence of the characteristics of interest. Ratio level would be categories, measures that name and rank or order the observations and give meaningful differences and ratios between data values. There is an absolute zero in this case. So, for instance, a grade typically would be an interval level Because even if you make a 0 on an assignment, that doesn't mean that you know absolutely nothing. It's just nothing measurable was on there. You missed every problem, but maybe there were some little bits and pieces there where you showed something. Ratio level, that's going to be like height. If something was 0 inches high, that would have no height. Somebody that's 10 inches tall, if we're talking about garden gnomes or something that's 10 inches tall is twice as tall as another object that's 5 inches tall. Okay, so back to our woodchucks. Nominal level, the classification of woodland creatures as woodchuck, squirrel, beaver, chipmunk, marmot, and others. One's not necessarily better than the other. It's just naming them into different categories. Ordinal level would be having a woodchuck contest and declaring some to be excellent, good, adequate, poor, pathetic. You know, there's definitely a ranking going on there. Interval level, the body temperature of a woodchuck in degrees Fahrenheit. In degrees Fahrenheit, there is 0 degrees, but it doesn't mean an absence of heat. Okay, so it is only an interval level measure. Degrees Kelvin is a ratio measure because 0 degrees Kelvin means the absolute absence of heat. So Kelvin would be the only one that is a ratio level as far as temperatures go. Celsius and Fahrenheit are both interval level. For ratio, again, the height of a woodchuck in inches, because a woodchuck that is 20 inches tall is twice as big as one that's 10 inches tall, which is twice as big as one that's 5 inches tall. The 20-inch tall one is 4 times as big as the 5-inch tall little woodchuck there. All right, that is it for lesson 1.1. I will meet you again here for lesson 1.2. Make sure you do the problems to try on your own. Thank you very much for taking good notes, and I will see you in class.